inaugural Google Hangout with Federal Labor leader Bill Shorten. The idea of tonight is that you, as party members and supporters, get to ask Bill some questions about what's been going on in Parliament and the Labor Party in general. Welcome, Bill.
Great to be here, Kate, and lovely to be part of talking with so many of our members in the ACT.
So tonight you'll get a chance to ask Bill your questions via Twitter. As you know, the hashtag is BillQ&A, one word. So if you get onto that on Twitter, you'll be able to see the questions coming in, and I'll be able to put those to Bill as the night proceeds. But Bill, we've had a couple of big days in Parliament already, so perhaps we could start by you giving everybody a bit of an update on what's been going on in Parliament today and what you think the next couple of days will hold.
Obviously, national security is a big issue. It's a challenging time for the nation. Labor's been taking a principled approach to the conflict in northern Iraq. We see our principles which matter here are to be, are we assisting with humanitarian relief and preventing mass murder and atrocities that we've seen by the ISIL terrorist organisation. Labor has also principles which say that we need the Iraqi government to be a government of national unity and a government who invites us here, unlike 2003. The preconditions for our engagement and support have been met thus far. But rest assured, Labor is taking a principles-based approach. We understand that you can't drain the swamp of terrorism by military action, and that's why alone. So that's why we've certainly formed the view that we need to be taking more refugees in Australia from this part of the world. We also need to be making sure that we're providing adequate levels of humanitarian aid. Closer to home, there's been the issues of national security. There are a few people, let me stress, a very small number of people, but nonetheless they exist, who are in contact or have been to this conflict in Syria and northern Iraq and would seek to carry out terrorist activities in Australia. Labor stands firmly for the principle of national security, so we will work with the government to make sure that we have the best protections for our Australian citizens. Like all of you, I've had people come up to me, and all of our members of Parliament have, over the weekend, saying, scared people were afraid. Let me just stress really clearly, our security and police agencies are doing the job they should. Labor will make sure they have the capacity to do the job they do. We're also mindful of the liberties of Australians and making sure that in terms of tackling hatred and terror, we don't compromise the very things we stand for. And at the same time, I think it's important that Labor people make it clear that the argument is with a few people who belong to terrorist organisations. It is not an argument about Islam, it's not an argument about religion. You can't defeat hatred with more hatred. You can't defeat intolerance by being more intolerant. So these are complex times, but it's not just national security which the Parliament's dealing with. Labor is determined to stand up this week on the question of jobs. We strongly support renewable energy target to generate jobs and investment and have a more sustainable future for our environment. We're fighting hard for Australian-built submarines. We're standing up against the changes which the government would make to people who are unemployed, the requirement that they go for long periods of time with no income whatsoever. So we're keeping the government to account on that. We're keeping them to account on higher education, making sure that they don't create $100,000 degrees and that they don't create a country where it's not how hard you work that matters, it's how much money you have. So there's plenty going on, and we're keeping true to Labor values throughout this week.
Thanks, Bill. I think that gives everyone a great context. We've got a question already come in, and you need to note that we've got quite a few questions already coming in on Twitter, so we'll get through as many as we can. But our first one is from Josh. What reasons would you give a young person to join the modern Australian Labor Party?
Well, here's a couple of reasons, Josh. First of all, someone famous once said that you've got to be the change that you wish to see in this world of ours. You should get involved in politics if you want to see a better society. There's ways that people can do that right now. Standing up so that people can afford a higher education regardless of their background. We're standing up so that we have real action on climate change, that we have a renewable energy future. We're also standing up strongly to ensure that there's proper international aid going throughout the world. These issues are all important to young people, and we are going to make youth unemployment a bigger issue than this government has been treating it as. So I think there's some good reasons there, but it's fundamentally about being the change in society that you would like society to be.
You mentioned climate change in that answer, and our next tweet from Cool Pete asks, will you restore a working policy on climate change when you get back in?
Yes, we will, Cool Pete. Yes, we will in terms of climate change. It's real, the science is in. The government's just got a proposal to pay millions of dollars to polluters to pollute more. That's not a policy. That's what you have for climate skeptics. We see renewable energy targets as part of our climate policy. We see making sure that we have a price on carbon, which is based on an emissions trading system, which is traded in a market. We think that these are all ways in which we can take real and effective long-term, multi-generation action on climate change.
Thanks, Bill. Our next question is from Ollie. Ollie would like some reassurance that Labor will stand strong in opposing all of the Coalition's policies on higher education.
We will, Ollie. Labor's taken a principled position. We don't support them retrospectively increasing the fees for people going to university. We don't support the unfettered deregulation of university fees, and we certainly don't support the massive cuts they're making to university.
Next one is from Cyber Mogul. I presume that's not a real name either. Do you believe the opposition front bench is strong enough to take on the government?
Yes, I do. We've got a strong front bench and we've got a strong back bench. What we'd like to have is more Labor members in the Parliament. We need to defeat the Abbott government. I'd like to see new blood come into the Parliament and new people, but the current team I've got is very good. We're very fortunate in Canberra though, and you're very fortunate, and I'm very fortunate too. But when you look at Kate, when you look at Gabe Brockman and you look at Andrew Lee, the ACT Labor Party contributes disproportionately, I think, to the merit of the federal Labor lineup.
Bill, our next question is from Sandra Walters. Why is Labor supporting Tony Abbott on sending troops to Iraq? This is just a distraction from the real budget and policy issues at home.
I understand why you're asking what you're asking, Sandra, and plenty of people have asked me that. But I think you need to be clear on the answer. The ISIL organisation is a threat to the security, not just in northern Iraq, but to us here. There are misguided Australians, a very few, disaffected, alienated people, who for whatever twisted reasons have joined that cause. Now I get the intelligence briefings, and I do believe that there's a very small group, but there are people both here and in northern Iraq and Syria who are seeking to cause mayhem here as well as northern Iraq. Furthermore though, Labor, and I'm greatly indebted to the work of my colleagues Mark Dreyfus and Tanya Plibersek, and indeed Gareth Evans, there is, I believe, an obligation to stand up against genocide, stand up against mass murder of civilians, of the innocents. That has been happening in northern Iraq. We've made it clear though that we shouldn't commit Australian ground combat units. We've made it clear that we think that a lot of the solutions lie in terms of supporting refugees and in support of humanitarian aid. But Labor's caucus position is pretty clear, and it's pretty supported. It is that we should do our bit as part of an international coalition of 40 countries, including 10 Arab countries from the region, just to push back, and it is quite different to 2003. There is clear evidence here of what's going wrong, and we are not seeking to topple a dictator or install our version of democracy. We're not seeking to occupy territory, we're just seeking to make sure that innocent people can carry on their lives without fear of murder, violence, attacks on people being put into slavery.
Bill, the questions are coming in thick and fast, and I know we're moving all over the place, but I'm trying to... No, you're fine. But I'm just letting you know we've got lots. The next one is from Peter Barter. Bill, what are you and the Labor Party going to do to protect my job in the Merchant Navy with the LNP bypassing the will of the Senate and opening doors to Chief Overseas Labor to work in the oil and gas sector?
I used to be a union organiser in the oil and gas. I'm familiar with the work that you would do. And my family on both sides are both merchant seafarers, so I have quite an affection for the work that you do. Australia's an island nation. We should have our own domestic shipping line or shipping services crewed by Australian crews. In the hydrocarbons industry, which is a boom industry, there should be jobs here for Australians. Through the support we've given to the Navigation Act, sets out some of the requirements and some of the issues you talk about, right through to having proper testing of the labour market to stop 457 visa workers replacing jobs which Australians are available to do. We are fighting very strongly. Of course, the best way to protect Australian jobs in this industry is to have a Labor government.
I should remind people too, if you are interested in joining the Labor Party, you can click on the link at the bottom of the page and that will take you to the right place. So we're very keen to sign many people up at once, but big recruitment drive. Next question, moving right along from Maureen Blackmore. Bill, Maureen wants to know, the Libs keep harping back to the financial mess Labor left behind. How could that be true when we still had and have a AAA credit rating? And is it possible for Labor to get the truth out there of where our economy stood at the time of the election?
We worked very hard to get the message out, Maureen, but you're quite right. We have low inflation, we had lower unemployment at the last election than we do now, and we have a AAA credit rating from the 3 major credit rating agencies in the world. So you're right. Labor's financial position of Australia left by Labor is not the debt and deficit crisis that the government says. Getting the story out there is a lot harder. That's why a gathering like tonight is so important for Labor to engage in. We need everyone who's listening here to repeat these facts. We have lower unemployment, we have low interest rates, we have a AAA credit rating. We need that story out there. We also need to get the story out there very clearly that Australia's government debt is far lower than the average of the world and far lower than most other countries that we trade with. So we are a sensible, responsible political party, and we need people to tell that story. People power really matters. So like Kate said, I'd encourage you to join the Labor Party, be part of that change that you think this country should be.
Next question, Watson asks, and on this jobs theme again, why is it important that Australia continue to manufacture our own defence material, particularly submarines? This has been a huge issue in Parliament also.
This is a multi-billion-dollar contract. I mean, building submarines might be everyone's area of interest. There's thousands of people who work on it. There's billions of dollars of taxpayer commitment over 40 years. We've had a submarine industry for 25 years. We've learned a lot in that time about building our submarines. We have the capacity to have an indigenous submarine building industry with our skills, generates jobs, generates technology which has a value-added benefit which exceeds just submarines and supports a lot of small businesses and apprentices. We can do quality work in Australia. This government promised before the last election they'd build these 12 submarines here. Now they're lying and breaking their word. They're pretending that the cost of building the submarines here is much greater than what it is. This government is so sneaky on the question of submarines, they won't even put the contract out to tender. So you heard me right. They're not even asking other countries to bid for it. They're not even letting the Australian Submarine Corps bid for it. So there's something very fishy going on here, and Labor will not stand to see our jobs exported to other parts of the world.
Bill, Alan Jackson asks, when are you going to abandon your inhumane refugee policy?
Well, I don't think our policy is inhumane. That doesn't mean we can't improve it. Let me just state the principles I have as leader of the Labor Party. First of all, immigration has been a great success story for Australia. I make this assumption, Alan, about you too. I think we're both proud of the fact that 27 in every 100 Australians is born overseas. Immigration is part of the reason why we're a successful, diverse, happy, growing nation. Within that, that means we take skilled migrants, we take family reunion, we take refugees. The argument comes down to in what manner do we take refugees to Australia. I do not believe the Labor Party needs to attack people coming here, demonise them, say that they're illegal, say that they're economic refugees. Most of our families are economic refugees if you want to create that test. But, to be fair, the reason why we support regional processing is that if you have people smugglers putting people on unsafe boats to Australia, you will have massive loss of life. And the truth is that in recent years, there was loss of life which can be avoided. So I think we have an obligation to try and discourage the people smugglers, to discourage the loss of life, still take more refugees than even we currently do now.
The next question I've got is from Jennifer Meyer-Smith, and Jennifer says, "Hi Bill, how will Labor improve welfare, notably new starts for poor, disadvantaged, unemployed?"
Penny Macklin, who's our formidable spokesperson in this area, is working on policies for the next election to get the new starts too low. I understand that the best thing we can do is try and get unemployed people a job. I never imagined that the new starts very low, that the government would actually scrap it for people under the age of 30 for 6 months. So it's a work in progress, Jennifer. I think part of the answer is better education so people can find work. Part of the answer lies in supporting our job search services. It also lies in educating employers about the benefit of giving unemployed people, in particular long-term unemployed, a go. And part of it is reviewing the level of our pensions.
Bill Franco's our next tweet. "What does Labor plan to do to restore the knowledge economy after the damage being wrought by the Tories?"
Well, I'm even going to ask Kate to answer part of that because that's an area of her expertise. But they are wrecking the knowledge economy, they're wrecking the NBN, they're making it harder for people to go to university, they're cutting scientific funding and research. This is a disaster, and they're also not properly funding schools based on needs. So there's 4 examples of them wrecking the knowledge economy. I think science and innovation should be part of Labor's flagship policies at the next election. We're working on them now. We certainly support the idea of a medical research fund. We just don't think that you need to tax the sick and the vulnerable to pay for it. I might ask Kate to talk a bit more about some of those issues because she literally is one of the people who advises me.
Thanks, Bill. From my point of view, what I can see all around me is that the policies and programs that Labor have in place to inspire industry, to support industry, to help industry grow and innovate are being pulled apart. $2 billion was our budget. They've reduced that to some 445 million or thereabouts. So a quarter of the budget is devoted to growing our industries and future jobs. And my concern is, with this government unpicking all of that, as Franco said, we're going to end up starting from a much lower base and lose our edge in areas of technological innovation that we're going to give our companies the boost they needed to get from going from a relatively slow economy through the GFC, but moving into the future growth phase, we were well positioned to take advantage of technological change through the support of our program. That's being unpicked. The reduction, as Bill said, to the science and research budget as well means that we've got less sort of feeder activity going into what our smart businesses of the future will look like, and that undermines job creating potential. So, as Bill said, it's a system that's being unpicked, not just one program or one policy. That's so, on to the lineup of tweets here. Paul Nichols, will Labor reinstate tools for the trade allowance for apprentices?
I don't know if we'll reinstate that precise program, but we certainly think that we need to have a program to support people during the costs of being an apprentice. What the federal government's doing is they've come up with this idea. Remember how they hate debt and deficit? They hate debt and deficit when it means that they could cut a program instead. When it comes to inflicting debt on young people, well, they're right up for that. So what they're saying, their policy is to allow apprentices to get into more debt during their apprenticeship. It's hardly helpful. We know that nearly half of all apprentices don't finish their trade. One of the reasons for that is making sure apprentices have the proper money, making sure that some of the costs of living that they encounter are supported whilst they're acquiring their trade. So we will do something in that space. I need to talk to Sharon Burt, who's my shadow spokesperson. She's from the Illawarra on this issue. But Labor will have a policy which goes towards supporting apprentices in training. Because not everyone wants to go to university, and there's a lot of people out there who want to make, and there's a lot of older people, and by older I actually mean older than 23 or 24, who want to become adult apprentices. So there's plenty we can do in that space, and what I'd invite you to do, Paul, is to perhaps drop us a line about what you think we should be doing too.
Thanks, Bill. Wade85 asks, do you think the ALP can be a truly mass party again? And if so, how?
Yes, I do. And I'd ask everyone on this line and everyone on this hook up to get one other person to join the Labor Party. We've grown from 40 to 50,000 people since the election. If every person in the Labor Party has one friend who's not in the Labor Party, and they can get them to join, we'd be at 100,000. It really, we don't own the newspapers of Australia, we don't own the TV stations. We don't own some of the large businesses, which of course are the bedrock for us funding support for the Liberals. But they don't own all of us. So if every person here could join one person, we'd double our size next week. And it's not that hard. There's a lot of people out there waiting to be asked about joining, just no one's ever asked them.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's certainly my experience when you do ask the question. I'm often surprised at the enthusiasm of the response I get. So take the step. We've got another one here from Jeff Manny. Jeff says, I'd like to let Bill know that Labor is as strong as ever. In the last election, Tony Abbott lied to people of Australia. His lies will come to bite him during the next election. My question is, are you going to win the next election knowing that Tony's reputation and credibility has been damaged? Well, it's the big question.
Can we win? Yes, we can. It's not a guarantee, not even a probability, but it's a definite possibility. People talk about political history and they talk about the legends of our past. It could be Chifley or Curtin. It could be Whitlam. It could be Hawke. It could be Keating. It could even be in more recent times, 2007 election, or Julia's leadership in 2010. What about all that history? Is it was made up of a whole lot of people. It's now our turn. People on this hookup and a whole lot of other people. It's now our turn to make Labor history and to make Australian history. It is by no means guaranteed we can win, but we are in a much better position than any of us thought we would be 12 months ago. This is a government who doesn't want to talk about domestic politics at all. Appropriately, they talk about national security as they should. They don't want to talk about anything else. And our challenge is to make sure that Labor has good, positive policies for the next election. This is a winnable election. And what we need to do is we need to win it because we've got the best policies in education and healthcare, because we've got the best policies for small business and innovation, because we've got the best policies about treating women as equal in our society, about supporting people in the regions of Australia, about making sure that people who grow old don't grow poor. The case for Labor has never been relevant, but it's up to all of us to make our own history, and we certainly can. And the government know it too. That's why they're scared of us.
Bill, the next one is from Kelly Bowman. How are we going to defend our flagship Medicare?
Medicare's the line in the sand. That word line in the sand is such a cliche. You know, you draw a line in the sand and say no one can step over. Do you realise why cliches stand the test of time at moments like Medicare? Medicare has always been opposed by the Conservatives. For 7 or 8 elections from 1969 when Whitlam first proposed it, the Liberals always campaigned against it. We thought they had worked it out by the late 90s. There's Tony Abbott returning to the scene of the Medicare atrocity, and he wants to undermine its universality. He has a vision of Australia which would see us like American health medical organisations, where instead of spending 9% of our GDP on healthcare, we spend 17%. Or instead of people being able to get the medical care they deserve based upon their Medicare card, it'll depend upon their credit card. Medicare is, to me, the symbol of a modern progressive Australia. It's a symbol of all of what's good in our society. It's an efficient mechanism for distributing healthcare in this country. We've always got to be a party who believes in the creation of wealth. But we've also got to stand up for the institutions which efficiently distribute fairness in this country. That's the minimum wage, that's the National Disability Insurance Scheme, it's the age pension, but it's also Medicare. I think Medicare, whilst there are plenty of other important issues, there's no issue any more important than Medicare. I want to fight the next election on Medicare. Because if we do, we will win.
Bill, Michael Rosser asks the following question. Hi Bill, you were elected leader on a pro-science platform. What steps will Labor take to make Oz a world leader in science?
We've got to lift the amount of resources that Australia puts into science, both private sector and public. I mean, that's making budget decisions which prioritise expenditure on science, technology, engineering, mathematics, teaching, education. It is also, we need policies which create an incentive for the private sector to invest in science, research and education. This government talks about medical research. Joe Hockey, the big windbag, just talks about wanting to help find a cure for cancer, as if that justifies his budget. How dare he use that as an excuse for his unfair budget? See, they've got an approach on medical research and science which says they'll cut general research, they'll cut the CSI rate, they'll cut a whole lot of programs, and they will tax poor people, sick people, for going to the doctor $7 each visit. That's not a science-based policy, that's a rob Peter to pay Paul attitude. So we will have policies which focus on greater investment from public monies and greater incentive for the private sector to invest, greater support for our postgrad researchers, greater support for these year 7, 8 and 9 kids who are doing science in the schools. There's plenty we can do, and there's plenty of models for us to follow around the world. But if you're interested in science, I want you to be a person who, at the next election, seeks out the Labor How to Vote card, because we're the party that best represents your dream of a smarter, cleverer, more scientific nation.
Bill, Raj Satija asks what your plan is to alleviate status with Canberra. There's no international airport, no fast train, and yet we're still the national capital.
I spend 20 weeks of my year here.
Beautiful place.
It is beautiful. When I was out today, there's no doubt with Floriade and Canberra in springtime, there's a few places better than that anywhere in the world. Labor did fund infrastructure in our time in government in terms of the National Capital Authority. The airport has had some expansion. I see there's a role for a fast rail and I see a role for an inland railway in Australia. But I'm interested, Kate, in what you and the other Canberra MPs and party have to say about that.
Yeah, well, we're certainly keen on the fast train. I remember my first ever lobby for a fast train for Canberra was way back in 1988. But it's been Labor, both in government and in opposition, that has tried to maximise that pressure to actually proceed to the right kind of feasibility studies that would see that fast inland train occur. Canberra's a wonderful place, and as a national capital, being able to have international travellers moving in and out of here with ease, I think is essential. At the moment, it's a special, one-off. But, I've got to give Canberra Airport some acknowledgement too. It was privatised, and they've done an amazing job.
It has expanded. I travel to a lot of airports. Canberra's airports are pretty good by national standards. But I think another thing we can do to help Canberra is stop the public servant bashing that goes on by the coalition. People have got a right to do their jobs, and Commonwealth public officers, in my experience, are very dedicated. Under a Labor government, there won't be public servant bagging and demonisation. The standard Conservative coalition answer is to cut some public servants' jobs, and that's not fair, and people have got to make long-term decisions, and you can't do that in a climate of fear.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Bill. We're certainly feeling it here in Canberra at the moment. Their commitment to cut jobs, and then now obviously their actions going way beyond. But I'll move right along. Terry Watson asks, how is Labor looking out for school leavers and making sure that I won't be starting a $100,000 degree. I guess with reference to the sign behind us. Yeah, what have you got to say to parents?
Terry, enrol in uni will defeat. What Pine's done is he has proposed doubling the interest rate paid on HECS debts. Imagine if a Labor government came in and told 1 million Australians on their home loans, which were fixed at under 3%, that with no warning, in fact, contrary to what we said, we would double the interest rate you pay on your home loan debt. It would be a revolution. People would just go completely right. Now what happens here is that that's exactly what the Liberals have done to nearly 1 million people with HECS debts. It's revolting what they've done. So I don't even think that's going to get them in the Senate. It's such a dumb idea. In terms of the other measures, they want to give universities greater autonomy to deregulate their fees. That's one issue, and you can debate the pros and cons of that, but they do it in a climate where they're cutting 20% away from the funding to Commonwealth grants to universities. So they guarantee $100,000 degrees. They guarantee doubling and tripling the cost of degrees. Today, the University of Western Australia revealed that the cost of a science degree by 2016 will go up 182%. Revealed that cost of an economics degree will go up 56%. Revealed that if you want to do a medical qualification out of the UWA, it'll be north of $100,000. So the best way to avoid the creation of a two-class Australia, where only the really well-off and a few others can afford to go to university, is to vote Labor. I mean, it's as blunt as this. If you vote Labor, what it means is how hard you work and the marks you get will determine your future. If you vote Liberal, it'll be your parents' wealth which determines how you go.
Thanks, Bill. This one's pretty close to my heart. Alan McGuire asks, will the party re-establish the previous NBN fibre to the premise policy when elected, or will the current broadband be kept?
Oh, the Turnbull's, I don't know if Turnbull's being silly or if he knows what he's doing, but either way, Tony Abbott's seen him. The current government's policies are basically giving Australia a single lane 60-kilometre road into the future, whereas we're proposing a multiple lane freeway where you could travel a lot faster. We're working on our NBN policies with a shadow team there, Michelle Rowlands, with Jason Clare. We haven't finalised all the details of our policies, but I can guarantee you that we will have a policy which gives Australia a 21st century approach, as opposed to Abbott and Turnbull, who are taking us back to the second half of the last century.
They sure are. Bill, Sandra Walters asks, and before I ask this one, I just sort of say we are not going to get to all of the Twitter questions. So I just want to manage people's expectations. There's a lot out there. But I'll keep going. Sandra Walters asks, what are your plans for supporting small business and innovation?
A lot of the new jobs being created in Australia are in small business. And a lot of the small business startups are mums or women who have taken some time out of the workforce. I think there's things we can do there in terms of their taxation, in terms of the paperwork they have to fill in terms of assisting them with understanding the employment rules, which good low-hanging fruit, which will make it a lot easier for people in those initial years to start their businesses up. We're open to reforming employee shares so that people can share the risk in the early startups. We see small business as an interim. We don't see it as automatically Liberal territory. But our challenge is how can we take the tax burden of small businesses so they can concentrate on being successful rather than having to worry about all the tax forms and compliance they've got to fill in. I think there's some real gain there.
And Gabriel Coburn asks, what is your plan to advocate for Australia's gay and lesbian community?
Well, I think we've got to try and convince the Abbott government to have a conscience vote, for instance, on gay marriage. We don't have the Liberals committed to a conscience vote. Not getting too far there. I'm proud to have been part of the last government which removed, I think, 88 different pieces of discriminatory legislation. I think we can do a lot more, though, to positively promote tolerance and diversity. So I think there's a bit which can be done there in terms of championing issues and opposing discrimination.
Bill, Jennifer Myers-Smith has tweeted again saying, thanks for the forum. Will you be having more of these so we voters are seen and heard with their experience in policy?
I enjoy the interchange. It's quite sort of like speed dating of policy. I'm conscious that in every answer I give it, there's another 10 questions people might have. But this is one of the ways we can use technology to bring politics to people. I'm very grateful for the fact that it's tea time. So many of you are having this discussion, you're interested in what goes on. But again, I've got to reiterate to you a sense of my optimism and strength. We can win the next election. The Labor Party is now going through a process of working out what its ideas should be. We are hungry for your ideas. We are hungry for your vision of what this country should look like. I'm also very keen for you to get other people engaged in politics. You know, we get out of the political system that we put in. This allows us to at least do it in a way which is accessible to people. I'm really grateful for your time there.
Bill, we've taken you all over the policy spectrum tonight, but I do need to start to wrap things up now. I'd like to say it's been a privilege for me to be a part of it. I know this is the inaugural one and that you're planning to do these sorts of things all around the country with Labor Party members. But now I just want to give you the chance to maybe make a few wrapping up comments before we close things off.
People say, or some elements in our media, some conservative interests, some in the coalition say that the day of Labor is over. That somehow all the great fights have been fought, that we should just leave it all to the market, that we should just leave it to the coalition and to a few vested interests to run this country. Well, let me assure you, the sun hasn't set on Labor. It's a new day for us. If we are united, which we are, if we focus on the issues that people care about, health, education, jobs, science, equal treatment of women, engaging in our region and Asia, making sure that we have a life outside of work, ensuring that we don't grow old and grow poor. We can win this next election, and we win it on the quality of our ideas. The only way we'll do that, though, is through people power. People power is a term which is often used, but not necessarily by people who think it applies to them. Well, let me assure you it does. My challenge is over the next couple of years to make sure that Australians don't accept the Abbott cynicism of the world, that the world is a scary, too hard place to live and deal with, and just get people retreating to behind their white picket fences. We need to be pro-markets, pro the international economy. We need to be comfortable about all forms of business and creation, economic growth and national income. And we need to be fundamentally committed to the great, generous safety nets of this country. The disability insurance, Medicare, a good education, a proper pension, a minimum wage. We do all of these things, and if Labor's true to its values, then our future is bright. There are millions of Australians who count upon the Labor Party to be their champion. I need all of you, along with the team I lead here in Parliament, to be the champions for Australia millions of people want us to be. Forward to work. Thanks.
Bill, thanks once again for being here. This has been our inaugural Google Hangout, an opportunity for ACT ALP members and ACT Labor supporters to talk directly via Twitter to Bill Shorten, our veteran Labor leader. Bill, thanks so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure.
Cheers. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.